You undoubtedly saw the headlines today. Israel launches third day of attacks on Gaza. Chaos in the Middle East. Arab-Israeli conflict erupts. Again? Yes, again. Now, there's a reason these headlines are so familiar. Here is where Israel is. It is a tiny country, a Jewish state, right smack dab in the middle of the Arab world, surrounded on all sides by Arab nations, many of whom do not recognize Israel's right to exist. Israel was, in a sense, conceived by war. A day after it declared its independence in May 1948, it was attacked by 5 neighboring countries: Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. What followed were decades of endless wars fought on and near Israeli soil. A war with Egypt in 1956, another with Egypt and Jordan and Syria in 1967, another with Egypt and Syria in 1973, one with Lebanon in 1982, and so on and so on and so on. And on top of various military entanglements with its neighbors, Israel has also been embroiled in various uprisings within its own borders among the Palestinian people. You will recall that famous handshake at the White House, right? Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin agreeing to a declaration of principles that said the Palestinians would be allowed to govern themselves in 2 areas: in the West Bank, a swath of land along Israel's border with Jordan, and another tiny sliver of land along the Mediterranean Sea that's known as the Gaza Strip. The war being fought at this hour is in that little sliver of land, the Gaza Strip. It's actually only about twice the size of Washington, D.C. Now, Israel withdrew from that land in 2005, but they still control the airspace, the territorial waters, and the Gaza-Israeli border. They're currently enforcing an embargo on the Gaza Strip. Once the Palestinians achieved some degree of independence there, they did what independent people do, what the U.S., in fact, encouraged them to do. They held elections. And in those elections, the ruling nationalist party, Yasser Arafat's party, Fatah, was defeated soundly by Hamas. Now, Fatah was no League of Women voters, but say what you will about them, they did begrudgingly accept, theoretically, Israel's right to exist. Hamas? Not so much. Not so much at all. The charter of Hamas explicitly calls for the destruction of Israel. Hamas is listed as a terrorist organization by both the United States and the European Union. The net result of that election for Israel, yet another neighbor bent on its complete destruction. Israel says rockets and mortars lobbed from Gaza into Israel killed 9 Israeli civilians since the beginning of this year. A shaky ceasefire between Gaza and Israel that had been brokered by Egypt that expired just a little more than a week ago. On Saturday, then, there was a surprise, broad daylight, coordinated air assault by the Israeli military on what Israel says were military targets in Gaza. Another round of headlines that scream chaos in the Middle East. Chaos in the Middle East erupts again. More than 300 dead on the Palestinian side in the last 3 days. 3 confirmed dead so far on the Israeli side. Israel's critics decry a disproportionate response to the rocket fire. An emboldened Iranian Ayatollah Khamenei says that any Muslim who dies in defense of Gaza would be deemed a martyr. Israel's defenders decry the Hamas government's refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist and, of course, the unprovoked missile fire into southern Israel. Today, Israel's United Nations ambassador said the goal of Israel's military offensive is to, quote, destroy completely Hamas. Meanwhile, Palestinian rocket fire into Israel continued despite the massive Israeli military attack. Now, as President Bush refuses to interrupt his last vacation as president to say anything about the Middle East tinderbox he purports to focus on so intently, is there hope that our new presidential leadership in our country could make a difference there? Or is this a situation in which there will always be violence, which precludes a political solution? And without a political solution, we can't ever have anything but more violence. Do you think that our kids and their kids and their kids will inevitably read the same headlines from the Middle East that we do now and that we have for so many years?